Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. May I have attention, please? All quiet, please. Thank you. You don't have to take your notes out. I do actually have something that I'm going to give to you, hopefully by the end of the period. Okay? Yours is the first of the 4 sections of government that I do. And so we'll see how far we get. Hopefully we'll get to a certain point because, frankly, today's lesson with you guys is a little bit more challenging, actually a lot more challenging for me, as you'll see as we go through. In fact, I had one student, one of the classes was like, what's an update? What's an update? What's an update? And I'm like, just wait patiently. And then that student actually did some research on their own. Raise your hand if you've done some research on your own to actually find out a little bit more. See, I know, and you had too, and you have too. All right, so you know some of the details here and so forth. And she sent me an apology, which was very sweet and so forth. She's like, I'm sorry. Because you're about to find out some things with respect to my friends, and one friend in particular that is, yeah, I mean, you'll see, right? So I feel really, really cool, very, very positive about the whole Estonian singing revolution and how people were able to get, under those circumstances, thank you, Gorbachev, for being fairly chill most of the time and allowing the people to have their songs and work ultimately toward their independence, because that's great. Culture, music, I love that. I think that's one of the really cool things. It's not all about war and politics and so forth. Sometimes it's like about just being peaceful and sticking to your culture and your nation, and it's just really cool. And I knew somebody who was very, very much part of that. I knew several people, and one of them had very interesting and powerful creative contributions to that, and that's Irmas, right? Lead singer, Irmas Alender, lead singer of the band Ruya. And others. Oh, and I provided guitar strings. Woohoo! And actually, in context of some of the things I'm going to be telling you today, you look and go, wow, that was really cool you could provide guitar strings, but as you'll hear, I wished I could have provided a lot more. I wished. And probably the thing that I've been providing over the years since I've gone into education, particularly teaching government, because I always end up talking about this and I'm looking for resources to help tell the story. The really cool thing is that I can tell this story. And so we're well along the way of telling the story of the amazing story of, woohoo, Estonia, and how they sang their way to their freedom, and how some people in particular played a really critical role in that. And that's just really good. I like telling that story. I like telling those kinds of stories better than ones about corrupt, inept, mean, divisive, untrustworthy political types and all those kinds of things, and how hopefully most of the time they're stopped. But this one has mostly a happy ending, because Estonia is, as you guys have seen, a free country today. And they're working their way through successfully. I mean, they're not free of all challenges, but they're a whole lot better off economically than they were when I first was over there. And they're a military ally of the United States. We'll update that and show you that, we got their back. And they got our back, too. They're smaller, but they got our back, along with our other allies.
What's their military like?
It's small, but it is tied into the United States, right? And we do military maneuvers. When you get up here, I'll actually show you pictures of one of my former students who went to the United States Army, who was sent on tour and was in Estonia. And I'll actually show you those, but not today. So, yeah, we're organizing with the Estonians on military maneuvers and so forth. Yep.
Who's our strongest military ally?
I would say the United States.
No, ours.
Ours?
Yeah.
I don't know. The combination. It's the combination of, in Europe, pretty much most all of the European countries. It's called North Atlantic Treaty Organization. We'll develop that more as we go along. NATO. Okay. So I gave you updates. Eva Cooley, awesome. She's doing great things for Estonia as a diplomat. I could see that perfectly. It's very much a wonderful person and has the right diplomatic kind of personality and so forth. Very smart. She does a great job on that. Okay? As does Kadi, working in the embassy. She's not the ambassador, but she's in the embassy. She's doing a great job there. And Yoko, I still remember her as this young gal bouncing around and doing all kinds of fun things and so forth. She's a mama. She's a wife. She is a leading politician in Estonia. Way to go, Yoko. Okay? And then today I'm going to be filling in on the rest of it. I'm looking at the clock here, and I've got 40 minutes to tell you the story. And hopefully, because I know you guys expressed some interest, and I have it all set up for you, and that is to hear some of Irmas's music. Would you like that? It's kind of a different kind of sort of thing. I see your eyes are smiling. Yeah, it's got your eyes smiling going, yeah. And hopefully you'll have enough time for some today. If not, then definitely when you guys come back, we'll spend a period, and if there's still some more on my list, you'll be able to do that, and I'll put all the links through Google Classroom, and you'll be able to listen and evaluate a song by Irmas, either individually or as part of his group Ruya, and then a cover version by somebody else, which sometimes is very interesting. Sometimes it's somebody else in a song competition. One of them, the actual cover group, is a massive load of singers at the Estonian Song Festival on stage. That's a really interesting one. Yes, quick question.
So, to clarify, did you say Estonia by giving that music focus on?
That's my entry. I mean, that's sort of like a catch, right? Did they need guitar strings for the people who were actually going out there and singing? Yes, they did, because their stores didn't have them, because the Soviet economic system didn't provide enough consumer goods. That was how I could help in a very small, simple way. Y'all would have done the same. In fact, y'all would have been like, I'm not going to be like Mr. Hansen and send one set. I'm going to send 2 or 3. What the heck? How many of you guys play guitar? Or know somebody who plays guitar? There you go. I mean, how many sets of strings could you go through if you're actually playing it a fair amount in a given year? You could go through a lot, yeah. I'm like, I don't play guitar. I'm like, I'll get one. Or maybe we'll go to another. Okay? All right. Here's the rest of the story. This is from one of the letters in here from Helia. This is after my wife and I have been back. We've been back in the United States for a year. This is from July of 1991. This is the challenge, because Irmas and Helia went to Sweden, and there's not a lot of Estonian speakers there. And he's a musician. He's a singer. Where is he going to work? Irmas is still singing in different restaurants. Actually, he's tired of this job a bit, but until the next job, he's singing rock classics, which is kind of like, oh my gosh. It pays, but his musical form is through the Estonian language. And I'll tell you what. I remember there was a time with Helia and so forth, she'd be like, hey, could you take his songs? This shows you, this is kind of pathetic. On the, here I gave the guitar strings. On the other side, here's the really pathetic part. I wish I could have done more. Could you take Irmas's songs? Could you translate them into English? Because we want to enter into the English singing music world. Like ABBA, the Swedish band. They made most of their money off of singing songs in what language? English. Why is English such a popular language to sing songs in? Exactly. It's the biggest demographic. Hello. I mean, if you go to the United States and hit it, and there will be people later on. I'll show you one of the people doing a cover song of one of Irmas's things. It was a young woman, and she broke into the music scene in the United States of America, singing all kinds of things in English and so forth. Yes?
Do you think he could come into this class?
You know what? Let me continue telling the story, and then if you have any, I'll answer that question later.
Oh.
Okay? You'll understand why. I'll answer that question later. In fact, eventually you'll be like, I don't think I need to answer that question. Details. I don't know everything going on there. I don't know. But I did get this letter from Irmas. I didn't get very many letters from Irmas because Irmas's main language was not English. But he did write to me in English. My problem is Helia is gone. We lived together 7 years, and now, after her birthday, she suddenly disappeared. Keep in touch. You never know why that happens. I didn't know. He wrote me another letter that same year, October 15th, 1992. Thank you for your friendly card. Yoko and I was very happy that you hadn't forgot us. I have released my first solo album called Old Clown. There's actually a cover of it. I'm dreaming now about how to release my music in USA. How do you think? Is it possible? I mean, haven't you any contacts in some record companies? I haven't yet. I hope that we'll meet again. Until then, thank you and goodbye. P.S. Excuse my bad English. I wish. I'm like, a college graduate, a law school graduate, I'm starting out in Boise, Idaho. I was the deputy prosecutor. This is like a couple years before I went into teaching. I wish that I had music contacts because Irmis is amazing, but I didn't. Could I help him out here? No, I can go down to the music store and buy guitar strings and so forth, but that's not much here. That's not much help here. He is looking for opportunities to move forward, right? And the American music scene is a great field to move forward into if you got the links and opportunities and so forth. But at that stage, not so much. He did ultimately go back to Estonia. He could, because Estonia now, by 1992, it's a free country. And he could do that. You guys doing a stare-off? No stare-offs in here. I'm trying to teach this thing. Oh my gosh. Meanwhile, Helia had met and married an American, and they ended up having 2 kids. And they're all grown up now. I've followed them over the years and still in contact with Helia and so forth. Very interesting. Without going into a lot of detail and so forth, her husband is very, very interested in politics. The American husband is very interested in politics and has some very interesting ideas about things like 9/11 and the influence on American government and so forth. Kind of fits in a little bit more in the so-called conspiratorial theme, but in any event, very, very interested in politics. So they're off. Helia. What's that? I don't want to get into it. Okay? Irmis, by 1994, has now gotten a job. Let me follow through. Ask questions later because I want to make sure that I get on pace. And I know you guys got a lot of good questions and so forth. But let me just go ahead and get through this part. He's taken a job singing on the MS Estonia. It's a large car ferry that goes between Estonia and across the Baltic Sea to Sweden. And back and forth, taking all kinds of traffic and cars and all kinds of shipment. He's playing music. There is an image that was taken of him playing music. He had just actually gotten that job in 1994. All right, it's a car ferry. It opens up the thing. Cars go in, trucks go in, and so forth. And then it crosses the Baltic Sea. That was in 1994. I wish that I was like in Los Angeles, like recording and doing all kinds of music and so forth. But he was looking for a job, and he got that job. And he felt pretty good about it. This is a letter I received from Helia in 1994, on October 3rd, 1994. We have had a terrible tragedy. Irmis drowned together with the ferry Estonia and over 800 people who couldn't escape. It was his first evening working as a troubadour on this boat. I remember how happy he was when you sent him some guitar strings to Estonia. Later on, when they did not sound so well anymore, he cleaned them and used them over and over again. He thought so highly of your friendship and was really happy when you visited us in Sweden. I was afraid, because when that hit the news in September, I was like, oh my gosh, I hope I didn't know anybody on that ship, because it went down, and it went down fast. I'll tell you. I'll try to tell you. This was from Eva Cooley. She wrote to me later that year. For me, this autumn and winter have been the most difficult ones in my life. I lost my sister at the ferry accident this autumn, and the life has been one big pain for all of us. We still are not able to cope with the reality. Four-year-old Louise is suffering the most. She ended up adopting and raising her sister's children, small children, who had lost their parents on the ferry that had sunk. That was the route it was supposed to take from Tallinn in Estonia across the Baltic Sea on the way to Stockholm. It went down. There's an image of it on the bottom of the Baltic Sea. What had happened? Well, we'll get to that in a moment. This is an image to the Estonia from September 28, 1994. That was when it went down. It's a architectural kind of rendition of a broken span, signifying the journey that was not completed. These are 2 images that I took. The last time that I went to Estonia was in 2005. It was part of a trip with students that I took to Scandinavia. EF, which is the main educational tour thing, they just had us doing a day in and out of Estonia. So we popped in there, and I'm like, hey guys, do you mind if we find our way to the Estonia Memorial? And the students were really cool, and so we walked there, and I took that picture, and there I could find all the names of the Estonian people who had perished on that day, and there's Irmis's name. What happened? Well, depending on who you talk to. Yeah, we'll get to that story in a moment. Depending on who you talk to, they have various different explanations. The ship sunk very quickly. I looked for various different kinds of things that will help explain it. This is one source. I'll play you the last 9 minutes or so of this particular documentary. Thank you. Of this particular documentary. And I'll post the link of this, so if you want to, you can watch the whole thing. Sometimes it's just really hard to watch some of the difficulties. I picked this up at the stage where the Estonia has put out a distress signal. There's no boats that are close enough. This is in the middle of the night, well past midnight, and the ship has gone down. And you're going to hear from people who actually had survived and talk about the experiences of being in the Baltic Sea where it's very, 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 very cold. I'll let them speak for themselves. This is one of the documentaries that are out there.
At 1:48, the Estonia disappears from the radar screen at the Finnish military base on the nearby island of Ruto. For those fortunate enough to escape, the cruelest battle to survive now begins. Only 137 from nearly 1,000 passengers and crew on board will survive. Even those lucky enough to find life rafts are likely to die from hypothermia.
I remember one very fit guy. The cold just went in through his skin immediately into the bones. So from being approximately 20 in the beginning of this experience, in the morning we were 7 alive.
Michael Doon's raft is the right way up, but inside there are still fatalities.
There was one man mumbling, talking, so I decided that I will hold his head above the surface, so at least he shall not drown in the life raft. So I held him for quite a long time. Then I felt that he was almost getting stiff, and then I decided myself that he's dead.
Having already lost his workmate Ivan at sea, Rolf Solman holds onto the hands of a young girl across the hull of the upturned boat. For hours, he tries his best to keep her conscious and prevent her from slipping off, until a big wave crashed over her.
She was taken way out into the sea. I couldn't hold her because I couldn't control my fingers.
It's too cold.
The first rescue helicopters arrived at 3 a.m. But there are equipment failures, and many survivors die, waiting for helicopters to return to base for repairs.
Now in the early morning hours, I really felt that death was eating itself closer to us.
The passenger ferry the Mariella, which at once had its own visor broken open at sea, is the first ship to arrive at the scene. The crew rescued the first 6 survivors at 3:08 a.m.
The person coming down from the helicopter, he tried to take the guy who was in the worst shape first, but he just panicked and he started to fight with the rescuer. So actually when he was on his way up to the helicopter, he just started to panic and he actually fell down in the water again and just sank.
By 9 o'clock, the last survivors are rescued. Kent Harster was one of them. In total, just 94 bodies are recovered. The majority of the 852 victims remain trapped inside the Estonia. The Swedish government decided it was both too expensive and too insensitive to lift the wreck.
We'll talk more about that.
In the coming months and years, that decision, and the wish to point the finger at anywhere but human error, gave rise to a rash of conspiracy theories, among them sabotage by the CIA or the KGB, or even by gangsters. But the Commission's exhaustive investigation and all credible eyewitness accounts disprove these. It's now clear that the sinking of the Estonia was the result of a chain of unfortunate events and mistakes that conspired with mechanical defects to ensure disaster. A 50-ton bow visor was reclaimed 1 mile from where the Estonia sank. Its poor welding and inadequate safety locks allowed it to be broken off by the heavy sea. The Commission's 3-year investigation revealed that all 3 countries had something to be ashamed of. The Finnish authorities had originally given the Estonia its A1 certificate, fit to sail anywhere in the world. Yet the bow had failed to satisfy the regulations. The Swedish and Estonians were responsible for maintenance and crewing. Yet survivors complained of doors being overpainted, life jackets which had perished, and faulty lifelines. The Estonian crew were criticised for their poor reaction time and evacuation. Now, Baltic countries take part in NATO exercises, where they rehearse for any such accident again.
A lot of rehearsal.
But on the night of the Estonia disaster, one of the ferries that had helped in the rescue, the Sugi Europa, also built by Meyer Werft, damaged one of its bow doors and had to be repaired. Now some ferry companies have welded shut their visors, added additional watertight doors, and installed partitions that split up the cargo. But for the Estonia, it was too late.
This is the most tricky question for me. Have I changed after the accident? And I think I take things more in shorter terms. I live more for the day. I'm not so stressed at work. If there's a thing that must be done, it's not that important that will affect my family life. If you can't do it today, then you can do it tomorrow.
And I think that night, I got, because of that night, a 10 years extra experience and still was in the same age. So I had to say, and I had said it before, that I could have been without 900 people's death. But for me as an individual, as a person, I do not, I should not have been without the Estonia accident. I've learned a lot. It sounds a bit strange perhaps what I'm saying now, but that's the way I think of it sometimes.
I can tell my mother and father how terrible it all was, but they just don't understand. And I have come to the conclusion
She was a
that they are
dancer
not that way,
on the ship.
because they just don't get it, how terrible it was. It is the hardest for those whose loved ones did not come back from there. I don't know how many were traumatized because of that. I wouldn't want to be crippled because of that. It is pure luck that I sit here. I don't. I laugh. I cry.
Today, Anneli Conrad lives with her husband and child in Estonia. Michael Boone has a family and works as an engineer in Sweden. Magnus Lindström now has 3 sons. He's moved away from his hometown, where this disaster claimed 56 lives. Kent Hallstedt kept his promise and took Sarah out to dinner in Stockholm. Today he's a Swedish MP who supports further investigation into the tragedy. Rolf Sorman and his family live in Stockholm. Having studied the photos of every survivor, he's never come across the faces of the men who robbed him. Hella Motors' pregnancy passed without further incident. 7 months after the disaster, she celebrated with her husband the birth of a son, Robin.
Like I say, I'll post the link for that. You can watch the entire thing. There's different perspectives, and in fact, that particular documentary says it's all done. It was an accident, and the claims that that there was something else going on is a conspiracy. Well, of course, the other people are like, well, then why don't we conduct a further investigation on the actual ship? I'll post another link to a more recent investigation. Somebody's done a very in-depth documentary feature in which they're basically saying, you know what was going on ships? And it's ironic that I'm talking about this now because in my 11th grade class we're talking about the sinking of the Lusitania. In World War I, the Germans sunk the Lusitania, a passenger ship. Why would they sink a passenger ship? Well, the Germans claimed, with pretty likely evidence supporting it, that the passenger ship had some things on it like war weapons and material that were going over to Britain to help them in the war. In fact, there's a speculation that the Estonia also had some things on board that were being taken from the former Soviet Union and being brought over to the West. And the Russians had said, don't do that, you shouldn't do that. And so does that mean that there was an explosion? There's maybe some suggestion that there was. And in fact, you look at the side of the ship. Again, I'll post the link to the documentary. You look at the side of the ship, and you see a big hole in it. Where did that come from? Was that from an explosion? Some even speculation that maybe there was a Russian submarine or something floating by and it bumped into it and caused, some damage and so forth. In any event, lots of people asking, what the heck was going on. More and more people, and now even the Estonian government is saying, let's conduct further investigations and let's not treat the site of the ship as like a memorial site. Let's actually take a look and see what's going on there. Who or what is responsible for the sinking of MS Estonia? Did you get this? Was it President Snow? No, it's not President Snow, but there was a movie with Donald Sutherland in it which basically takes one of the theories that there was something else going on, and they made a movie out of it. You could actually watch the movie. I'm going to show you the trailer here in just a sec. Here's the irony. In the movie, my friend Helia, right, plays the role of a nurse in the movie. There she is in the movie playing the role of a nurse opposite Jürgen Prochnow, who is the German actor who is playing one of the heroes in the movie. I mean, it's like life is stranger than fiction, and fiction is pretty strange to begin with. Yes?
Is that the guy on the right, is that the guy that played the young Rocky?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so. All right, here's the clip. Here's the trailer for The Baltic Sea. It's an okay movie, I mean, as far as movies go, but I think it's fascinating because it's attempting to tell a version of the story of what happened to the sinking of the Estonia. I'll play it.
Story about the rats deserting a sinking ship. I don't think you can prove it. The story of the rats that they've been accused of that.
Oh, exclusive. No, darling. I'm speaking to you about a suitcase full of growing goodies.
To jeopardize the delivery? This man. Has she done something wrong?
Tell me what happened.
My son Max. I can't find him.
They say that the wicked and innocent took. But I can't tell you
There's your trailer to the Baltic Sea. Yep.
Did anyone play Airman? Is that his name?
Not in that movie, no. I mean, and it's like a spy thriller thing that's like tangentially tied into what's going on and so forth there. I think it's interesting because 3 years after that, I mean, it's like the Titanic movie came out. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but it was the rage when it came out. And of course, it's about the ship that sunk in, what was it, like 1911, 1912, something like that. And it ran into an iceberg, and it sunk slowly in the Atlantic Ocean, and most of the people died. And remember when that movie came out, you know, people are like, oh my gosh, they're just so enwrapped in this story of Rose and romantic and so forth. And I'm like, gag me. Actually, I was quite reluctant to watch the movie for quite some time. Eventually I did because, you know, it's like, how many people going to see Titanic for the first time actually knew somebody that had drowned in a shipwreck? I did. But it was fascinating to me because the things that I liked the most about or found the most meaningful about the movie Titanic wasn't there, sorry, lame story, side story, but it was the real story of the people who were there. And what struck me most was the story of the musicians who were on the ship. And this is true. There was not room enough for them on the scant number of lifeboats and so forth. They played music at the very end in order to try and help calm the people who were still on the Titanic as it went down. And I know from the testimony of the divers who went into the Estonia wreck, most of the people never made it out of the boat. A lot of people died as a result of the collision and so forth, and then a lot of people didn't get out. And I think that's where Irmis was portraying, playing music at the time. I'll play this clip, and I like the music part about it. The other part is very dramatic when the Titanic starts actually crashing and breaking down. How many of you guys have seen the movie Titanic? Yeah. So, like I say, the story of these men who play their music right at the very end was most moving to me. Since that tragedy, Helia, and particularly Yoko, have done a great deal to keep Irmis's memory in place. The members of Ruya that had broken up when Irmis went to Sweden, they did a benefit concert to raise money for Yoko, and she actually sang at that concert. She's done a lot to keep Irmis's music alive. And frankly, she didn't have to do that much in the sense that the Estonian people recognized that while there was tragedy and so forth and all the people that died in Estonia, they still had so much of Irmis's music. And it's been one of the positive things for me in the midst of all of these situations to take note that his music hasn't gone away. And so what I'd like to do with you guys now is give you an opportunity, as some of you had indicated you were interested in earlier, to listen to his music and to compare his music to cover versions. It's a great honor when somebody does great music, then people come along afterwards and they do cover versions. So what I've given you is a handout, is a sheet, and I'm going to be playing these songs. The first one, a translation from English, When I'm Not Around Anymore. This is cool because we actually get to see Irmis with a guitar performing this. This is in the early 90s. And then you'll hear a cover version. And what you should write down here in order to get the credit, and I'll give you extra credit for this, for completing all of these. We'll do some in class, including next time, and then the rest outside. Basically, write down your opinion. Write down your observations. Some of you guys are musically talented, far more than I, and you can have various different musical observations, one and then the other, and then you'll circle. Which one did you prefer the most? The original, the cover, or both? You ready to hear Irmas? Here's Irmas. I don't know if those are the same guitar strings. I think at this point, he's going to have an opportunity to get more.
Hoian su käsi mun kallis, kui tuju sul nukker ja hall. Mu pingid tuli villases sallis, ei tundu nii käre külm talv. Ma korjan su üles kui langed ja üksinda tõusta ei saa. Ei hooli, et väljas on hange, mu juures küll sooja sa saad. Et oled sa mõelnud või tundnud, mis saab, kui mind enam ei ole, või endasse tagasi tõmbud, kui sulle mind enam ei ole. Võib-olla sul jäävana tundun, kui meri või põline laas, kui taevas, mis päeval tummub, kui kastetilk auravas maas. Ent minulgi vahel on valus, kui peitma pean pisaraid. Ma tean ju sa kergelt ei talu mu kurbuste tagamaid. Ja saimad kui habras on nii, mis mind sinu kui eluga seob ja jäädavad minema siit mõni õnnetu hetk minu viib. Sa oled siis mõelnud või tundnud, mis saab, kui mind enam ei ole, kui endasse tagasi tõmbun, kui sulle mind enam ei ole. Kui mind
before we get your comments on his performance, we'll get the performance. This is from Estonian TV. They do music competitions. Oh my gosh, can you imagine Estonia with all the music and singing and so forth? America's Got Talent and American Idol, they have Estonian versions like Eurovision and so forth. Yeah, and The Voice, they perform many of his songs in their competition. There's Margus Vaher. Same song. God. Wow, I was going to wait for hands before you chime in. Anyone want to express their opinion on Irmis's or the cover version? Yes, Michael, what do you have to say?
So I basically get an out of 10. Urban, solid 8.
Uh-huh.
I got terrible.
Okay. So you preferred Irmis's version? Okay. All right. Why?
Well, in the original, like, you can notice that, like, he starts, like, slow, and then he goes up that, like,
Uh-huh.
pitch, and then he goes down so low. It got stable the entire time.
Okay. What do you think?
Really better with the guitar.
You like the guitar as the accompaniment? Okay. You like that one? Okay. It did seem kind of soft. Yeah. It did seem kind of soft. Yeah, there's going to be a variety of different things here. Would you guys like to do some more?
Yeah.
Should we have another period of these? So don't do all of these over the break. How many of you guys preferred Irmis's on this one? How many of you guys preferred the cover version on this one? How many of you guys it was about both? Okay? So you'll hear some different things. There's no wrong opinions. You can wipe down. Yes, what did you have to?
Another thing I noticed is Ernest was smooth throughout the whole thing, and then that the cover had that one note. It was like boom, boom, boom.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it varied quite a bit. There's no wrong opinions on this, except I like Irma's a lot. Mm-hmm. Oh, Latvia. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Yeah, I would think so, especially in light of the fact that you've had some recent, study of the time period and what was going on in the singing revolution. Yeah. Yeah. You managed. You had enough English there. Because your Latvian isn't very good. Yeah. Oh, is that right? Your Google phone. Oh, and it's not bad? Okay. Well, thank you for letting me share that with you guys. I won't say it gets easier every year, but you guys have a good rest of the day and have a very safe and enjoyable holidays. And on Tuesday, Irmas and some other ones. We'll get through a whole bunch of those. You guys can go. Oh, great. He's going to conquer the Soviet Union and call it Latvia. He wants to be a modern-day Genghis Khan. Yeah, this is the tough one, Sage. This is the aftermath. This is like the update. This is for those people who haven't bothered to actually look it up themselves. This is where they find out.
I do.
I've gotten better, and I've had to I try to end on a very positive note. So last period we were able to go to 2 of the songs, and so they were able to compare one of his songs plus the cover. Welcome back, Hayden. Oh, I need to turn this off. I'm done.